Hi, everyone. Welcome to my Nutritional Foundations video. I'm Andrea Dahlman, and I am a nutritional therapy practitioner, and I specialize in digestive conditions and IBS. And I really feel like the foundation of good health is a clean diet, and that's really what we're going to be covering today. So setting up your eating for success, that's really what we're going to be covering today. We're going to talk about keeping a food journal. We're going to learn how to read labels. We're going to understand the foundations to your diet, how to choose the best diet for you. We're going to talk about macronutrients, a little bit understanding about your cravings and what they're telling us, and how to eat away from home, that's where sometimes we get astray, right? Because we're not in our home. So how do we eat away from home when we're trying to eat clean? And what to expect when making a change to eating clean. So the first thing that we were going to talk about is food journaling. Now, your body keeps a food journal whether you write it down or not. So in keeping a food journal and being honest with ourselves, it gives us a level of accountability. But the other thing that can really help us with is it can help us identify if there's a food we're consuming that our body is voting no on. So when you are food journaling, it's important not only to write down what you're eating, but what you're experiencing before you eat and post eating. So if you eat something and you feel bloated, or you have get a runny nose, or there's coughing, or even other digestive upsets, maybe it's causing diarrhea. Those are things that you're going to want to write down on your food journal so you can identify if it was just a one-off or if it really is a food that's causing you an issue. And by food journaling, you can really hone in on what your triggers are. I've had a lot of clients, they come and go over the years, and the ones that keep the food journals, they really get the best results because they're dialing in and paying attention. It's so easy to do mindless eating these days. We're so busy. We're doing 100 different things while we're eating. And honestly, when we slow down and pay attention to what we're eating, we have this opportunity, a beautiful opportunity, to understand what our body really likes and what it's telling us really no. So keep track and write it down. And like I said, your body is keeping a food journal, even if you're not writing it down. So what did you eat or drink? How did you feel? And be sure to be honest with yourself. Let's move on to label reading. Reading ingredients first, then the label. So when you look at a label, you're going to turn that over and you're going to look at the ingredient list. So you really want to pay attention to what is the first 5 ingredients, because those are the ones that's the most in that particular packaged food. It would be best if we didn't purchase anything that was packaged, but honestly, that may not be realistic for all of us. So you really want to learn how to navigate the labels. So turn it over, read what those first 5 ingredients. The rule at my house is if sugar shows up in the first 5 ingredients, put it back. We're not buying it. So that can be your rule at your house too. And you want to pay attention. So the order that those ingredients show up, they are from most to least. Now, one little trick, the label makers, they know this. And so one of the things that they've started doing is using lots of different types of sugar. And so as a result, that won't appear in the first 5 ingredients. It'll appear lower down. If you start to see, beet sugar, cane sugar, different types of sugars littered throughout the ingredient list, you're going to want to count those, because chances are if they used one of those sugars, it would be first. So we want to pay attention to that. Or don't buy anything with labels. But like I said, might not be realistic for all of us. Shop the perimeter of your store, or better yet, a local farmer's market when you can. I'm not a fan of counting calories. It is really 1990s that we were super consumed with eating. If you are eating a properly prepared, nutrient-dense diet, which we're going to talk about more in detail in this video, then you're going to feel satisfied and satiated. Macronutrients, that's something that we're going to talk about more in detail, but we really want to have a balanced combination, and it will be dependent on what's best for you. So some people need more fat, especially women as we get older, because hormonally we need to have healthy fats in our diet to create good hormones. And then some people, younger people, they need those carbohydrate sources. They need good quality protein sources. So it's different strokes for different folks. We have to find what's best for you. We don't want a particular diet. We want what's best for you diet. And just because you cook at home doesn't mean it's healthy. So a lot of times we get we're in a hurry, like I was saying earlier, and we're just like throwing stuff together and we're not really paying attention. Honestly, we got to read the labels. We have to pay attention so that we can create health changes. So here's the lowdown on the label. Now, the people who make the packages and the labels, they don't think we're going to pay attention to things like this. Always look at the servings per container. So like in a bottle of kombucha, which, kombucha is good for you. You should drink kombucha. It's actually 2 servings in that bottle. So then when you look at the rest of this information, you have to double it to really understand how much you're eating, drinking, consuming. So pay attention to the number of servings per container. How big the serving size is. A lot of times we are having 1 to 2 to 3 times the suggested serving size. And again, that's going to increase what we think we're actually consuming. Calories are a measurement of energy, not nutrition. A measurement of energy. So this tells us how much energy we will receive from this particular food. So we need to pay attention to that, because higher calories just means that they're saying that you're going to have a more of an energy burn. But we really want to be paying attention to the fat, the carbohydrates, and the protein. The fats here, this is total fats, and we want to avoid trans fats. So you want to always be looking for 0 trans fats. So do not consume trans fats. If it has a trans fat in it, put it back. Saturated fats, 1 to 2 grams, 3 grams, that's fine. We just want to make sure that it's low in the total. For cholesterol, I'm never concerned about cholesterol, because dietary cholesterol really only makes up 20% of your total cholesterol number. Cholesterol is a healing agent in the body. So unless you have an extreme case or you have a health history with cholesterol and being very, very high, this isn't something that I personally have my clients pay attention to. Now, sodium, that's an important one to watch. We get 2 teaspoons of sodium a day. That's 2,300 and some odd milligrams of sodium. And if we're eating packaged foods, that can go up super fast. Why is that important? Why do we want to be paying attention to the sodium? It's not so much that sodium is bad. It's just that we can tend, if we're choosing packaged foods, we can tend to overconsume that sodium. And then we start to retain water, and it starts to throw other parts of our body out of balance. So if you were choosing and consuming packaged foods, you really do want to pay attention. Even the things like the organic, like Annie's, and some of the, organic, like canned soups and that, they get really high in sodium. So pay attention to that. Here's your carbohydrates. This is your total carbohydrates, and then we can see how much fiber is in this. So this has 4 grams of fiber, this particular product. And I always am looking for high fiber foods. So if you're someone who's looking at bread, for example, you want to choose a bread that has 5 grams of fiber per slice. And that's going to help slow down how fast it gets absorbed into your blood system and not create a blood sugar surge. So the higher the fiber, in my opinion, on packaged foods, the better. This total sugars. So here, this is an interesting one, and this is a change that they just have made, where they have total sugars and then the added sugars. So we can see here on this product that this is 12 grams of total sugar. Now remember, at 1 teaspoon of sugar is 4 grams. So this is, whatever this product is, has 3 teaspoons of sugar per serving. So if I eat 2 servings of this, I'm going to be consuming 6 teaspoons of sugar. So that's actually quite a lot. But the thing that's the most important is the added sugars. Now you're going to get products that have natural occurring sugars in it, like things that are fruit-based, and that's okay, because normally that will come with more fiber and will slow it down in the bloodstream. But if you're looking at this particular product, this has a lower fiber count and a higher sugar count. So this might be a product that we would avoid. Protein. This is 3 grams of protein, and protein can vary depending on what it is that you're purchasing. So this is the protein in this particular product. These vitamins right here, these are usually synthetic vitamins. They are replaced so that they can meet the specificity of the daily allowance. So I don't really pay attention to this unless it's a whole natural product, then I might be looking at it. But honestly, you're probably, the vitamins, in my opinion, it's a little bit of a useless bit of information. I'm more focused on this added sugar number. That's important to me, and the the number of servings per container, so I'm aware of how much I'm eating, and paying attention to this fiber if it's and the sodium. Those are the things that we need to be looking at if we are choosing a packaged food with a label on it. Now, label reading, it can be really, really overwhelming because the marketers know that they have their buzzwords, right? So what's pasture raised, or what's grass-fed, or cage-free, or organic? And I'll let you pause this video at this point so you can read through these. I'm not going to sit here and read all of these to you, but you need to understand that the marketers know that they're looking for those buzzwords that are going to create us an excitement in us, and we're going to think, oh, okay, yes, I'm going to purchase that because it's natural. Natural is a marketing scheme. There's no regulation around using the word natural. And then they even get into these certain labels, and we look at them and think, oh, if it has, it's gluten-free, or if it's USDA organic, or, we start to think, oh, it must be good for us. Don't buy into the labels. Do your homework and pay attention to what the product is, and look at that ingredient list, and look at those things that we looked at on the label. That's what's going to be important, not what the marketers put on the front. So again, the marketing teams and everything have led us into this overwhelming space of, well, should I eat butter or not? Is butter good or bad? Should I eat, more meat, or should I be vegan? Like, what is the right answer? And that can feel really confusing. I like to look at a properly prepared, nutrient-dense diet, and that helps regulate your digestion, regulate your blood sugars, gives you optimal, healthy fats, your minerals stay balanced, and you're well hydrated. And when these things are all playing in your diet, then you experience optimal health. So what's the best diet? That's the thing that feels super confusing, right? Because we hear about, like, oh, we should be on a keto diet. That's the one to be on. Or, oh no, it has to be the Mediterranean diet. Or, oh, I have an autoimmune condition, so I should be on autoimmune. And the reality is different strokes for different folks. It really is bio-individual, super important to understand that just because so-and-so is doing such and such doesn't mean it's right for you. You have to find the diet that is best for your body. And it takes some time, and it takes some effort. And it goes back to that food journaling of understanding what foods are working for you and what foods are creating stress. Because the thing that we want to do is remove the foods that are causing stress so that your body has access to the nutrition of the foods that you are consuming. The best diet is the best diet that brings health to your body. Focus on a properly prepared, nutrient-dense diet. That is what we want to be looking at. This is the food pyramid from years ago, where they had us consuming all kinds of grains, very little fruits and vegetables, even less so here. And even the fats we were getting, this is when fats were demonized, and they were like, don't eat a lot of fats. And I don't know that we need to eat a lot of fats, but we need to have the right types of fats in our diet so that we can promote good health. So what is a properly prepared nutrient-dense diet? That is avoiding boxed, canned, or bagged foods, and non-foods that come out of a window. What I mean by that is fast food. Honestly, not nutrient-dense, not properly prepared. There is no right way, right food for every person. We are all bio-individual. We each have our own set of cells and DNA, and we have to honor and respect that what works for us might not work for someone else. Now, there might be some principles that you could apply, but being doing a diet that's properly prepared and nutrient dense allows for you to have some freedom within that. And so when someone says, oh, are you doing the blank blank diet? You can say, no, I'm doing the Andrea diet because I'm choosing the foods that are best for me, Andrea, or you, fill in your name. So, but the thing to pay attention to, and this goes back to the food journaling, is the top allergenic foods: gluten, corn, dairy, eggs, and soy. Those foods can cause reaction in the body. And it's subtle, especially on those packaged foods, because corn doesn't just take, like, it's not just corn, like corn on the cob or corn. It's corn chips and corn tortilla and dextrose, because that's a corn-based product. And so we're looking at not just that particular food, but all the ways that that food can be used and put in as an ingredient. So we want to pay attention, and food journaling, back to that food journaling, it really is a powerful tool. If you're paying attention, you might think to yourself, you know what? I really do react to eggs and I can't eat them. And that's important because it's causing stress to my body. Let's talk about carbohydrates. So remember, there are 3 macronutrients: macro fats, carbohydrates, and protein. Carbohydrates are that carbohydrate energy is good in the body for about 45 minutes. And these are things like grains, quinoa, rice, oatmeal, for example, fruits, green tips, bananas, grapefruit, and green apples and berries are lower in sugar, just as a point of reference. So if you're trying to reduce the amount of sugar that you're consuming in your diet, those are the types of fruits that you'll want to start with. But all fruits are a carbohydrate source. Vegetables. So this is tubers and root vegetables, leafy greens, and this is the tomatoes and potatoes as well. And I didn't put in this list beans. Beans are also a carbohydrate source. Carbohydrates have been demonized, and I would say don't demonize carbohydrates. We actually do need them. They're important to us. I think that we should have a healthy amount every day, mostly in the vegetable category. If you told me you never wanted to eat a fruit again, I probably would be like, okay, I'm not as concerned about that, except for variety reasons. But if you are doing your due diligence of getting a large variety of vegetables, especially leafy greens, super powerful and important to your overall health, this is where you want to focus, is on the vegetable category within the carbohydrates. So grains and rice and oatmeal, what about pasta, Andrea? Yes, that's a simple carbohydrate. It is a carbohydrate source, but it doesn't come with anything. So every time we eat a carbohydrate source that's been touched by man, less and less nutrition is available in that particular carbohydrate. So if I have a rice pasta, it's been processed and processed and processed into the pasta. And it's not that the pasta is bad or evil. It's just it isn't nutrient dense as rice itself. So that's what we have to pay attention to, is trying to choose those carbohydrate sources that are as close to the way that they were grown as physically possible. Let's talk about protein. Protein energy is 3 hours in the body, and we want to choose high quality proteins. And that can include things like poultry or organ meat, but only from grass-fed. You only want to choose grass-fed if you're going to choose an organ meat. Gelatin or collagen from Great Lakes, which is a powder that you can use. It's wonderful to put into like coffee or tea as another protein source. If you can tolerate dairy, that's a great protein source. Nuts, there's something about nuts that, and I don't have time to go into it in this video, but soaking them and making sure that they are properly prepared, that's important, or choosing raw nuts. Protein powder, I like the ones with only one ingredient, although I have found one, and if you message me at any time after you've seen this video of like, Andrea, what is your favorite protein powder? I'm happy to send you a link to my favorite protein powder. But protein is important because proteins break down into amino acids, and those amino acids are building blocks for our body. So they provide support to our immune system and to our tissue and regrowth and health. So we want to have high quality proteins in our diet, and we want to choose from this list. So here's some just miscellaneous tips about going back to the nightshades or going back to the carbohydrate sources. So nightshades, you might want to eliminate those if you have issues with inflammation, specifically joint in like pain and stiffness in your body. Nightshades contain something called solanine, and solanine can cause inflammation in those areas. So these, the nightshades include eggplants, peppers, that's all the peppers, tomatoes, and potatoes, which I didn't put on this list, are all nightshades. So if you're someone who suffers from that, you might want to remove those for a period of time just to see if they don't help eliminate your inflammation. Pay attention, again, back to the beginning, food journaling. If you're consuming a lot of nightshades, that could be something that you're circling and saying, oh, interesting. I do consume a lot of potatoes, tomatoes, and peppers. And I am finding that I am more inflamed. And and it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to completely cut them out. It just might mean that you need to reduce them or to rotate them or to not eat them all at the same time. Like salsa for a person who has a nightshade sensitivity, that's like throwing gasoline on the fire. So again, food journaling, paying attention. If you have a thyroid issue, and this would be something like a more extreme, Hashimoto's specifically, you may want to avoid the goitrogen containing foods, and those are cabbage, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, rutabaga, tuna, turnips, cauliflower, millet, kale, spinach, and soy. Soy, I would say, is one of those foods that I would tell you to probably completely avoid unless you are vegan and you need to have a separate protein source. And then I would say choose, if you are going to eat soy, choose fermented soy and make sure that it's organic, because then you're going to avoid all the GMO soy. Healthy fats. Fats are so incredibly important for our diet. We want to choose from healthy fats. And here's the list that you can see, but fat gives us energy in the body for 4 hours. So when we have a good balance of fats and protein and carbohydrate sources from vegetables, we're really getting a beautiful blend of all of the energy. So, and it's not that you have to eat a lot of fat. A little bit of fat can last you a long time. So, you know, a quarter of an avocado or a tablespoon of butter in something, or, you know, a little bit of coconut oil put in with your food will help that food last longer and give you a more stabilized blood sugar. So we want to choose healthy fats. We want to include fats in our diet. But the things, like I said before, we want to avoid are the fats that can cause us issues. And these are margarines and oils. And not that these oils are necessarily bad, but and some are on this list. But like, we would never want to eat canola oil or shortening made from canola oil, because they get turned into trans fats in the body and they cause cellular dysfunction. So we want to avoid. I tell people, just take these out of your diet for now. Focus on the healthy fats and don't consume these for right now. Other foods to avoid: artificial sweeteners. Oh my goodness, they wreak such havoc on your hunger hormones and your satiation hormones. So eliminate those. Sucralose and Splenda, get them out of the diet. They are definitely not going to be beneficial to you, even if you think, oh, this is a great product. And some of the supplement companies, they will put that sucralose in there because they want to say no sugar. And so you have to do your due diligence and pay attention and read the ingredient labels, even on your supplements. Farmed seafood. Do not eat farmed seafood. It's not healthy. It's not good for you. You're not going to get the health benefits from that. GMO foods, you want to really try to do your best to avoid any genetically modified foods. It is really super hard nowadays to distinguish what's GMO and what's not, but a lot of people who are trying to make packaged foods, the healthier versions for us, they're doing what they can to say GMO free. So be looking for that, but don't necessarily put 100% stock in it. You know the company and know what you're purchasing and what you're buying. Conventional organ meats. So the organs that we would like, specifically like livers, like chicken liver or beef liver, our liver is our detoxification organ. So we don't want to consume a detoxification organ of an animal that has not been raised properly. And a conventional animal has had all kinds of antibiotics and drugs to keep it healthy in the living environment that it's in. So we want to avoid those. So if you choose, and I would tell you that like livers are great, but you need to make sure that they're organic liver if you choose to have an organ meat that way. Let's talk about dairy quickly. So a word about dairy, full fat dairy, that is better. Now, some people are like, well, what about my 2% or my 1%? And I'm like, I get it. We've been sold a whole bill of goods on that. So the way dairy comes out, when it comes out of the cow or sheep or goat, whatever it is, that it comes out and it's whole. And then in the 80s or probably late 70s, they decided that fat was evil. So they started taking all of the fat out of those products. But the problem is that when you take all the fat out, you take all the vitamins and minerals too. So now you just have this like white water. So what they ended up doing was putting 1% or 2% of the fat back into those products. And then they still didn't have enough because 99 or 98% of the vitamins and minerals were still gone. So what do? How do they correct that? They spray synthetic vitamins into the milk so that they can meet the requirements of the packaging. And so your body has to process, and it's not, those vitamins aren't exactly the way that they were. And so your body, when you drink or consume low fat dairy, it goes to the liver, and the liver has to look at it and go, well, that looks like vitamin A, but it doesn't exactly. So I have to spend time taking it apart to figure out if that really is what I think it is. So then your liver is spending time doing that instead of detoxing poisons and extra hormones and all the other jobs that we want it to be doing. If you have full fat dairy, you're going to feel more satiated. You're going to get the food the way that it was supposed to be. So choose when you can full fat, cheese and yogurt and sour cream, and whole milk is best. And you will consume less of it because it has the fat in it, and you're going to feel satiated. Fat helps us feel satiated. And that's why we love that taste or that feeling of it, because we're like, oh, I can have a little bit of this. It's really hard to overconsume something that has a high fat content because it's too rich for us. So we automatically will consume less. So dairy is tolerated by some people, but not all people. So if you know you can't, like I'm dairy intolerant, I can't do it. Tried to go back many times and my body says, nope, can't handle it. So if you're not a person who can do dairy, then, stay away from dairy. Raw dairy is best, but it's really hard to find. And depending on what state you're in and where you're watching this, you might not be able to find raw dairy. Goat milk is a little bit easier to digest than cow's milk. So if you have a cow dairy sensitivity, you might see if you can consume goat milk instead. Goat cheese, and even sheep is sometimes easier to consume for people who have a dairy sensitivity. But signs that you are not digesting dairy products well are gas, bloating, upset stomach, headaches, acne. A lot of people get acne when they have a dairy sensitivity, bumps on the back of your arm. And you might either run constipated or have diarrhea. Usually it's one or the other. So if you're someone who is like, oh, I'm constantly constipated, or oh, I always have diarrhea, start with the top 5. Corn, gluten, eggs, soy, and dairy, and remove those to see, like, is that one of the root causes of what you're experiencing? All right, getting close to the end here, wrapping up. Cravings. Why do we have cravings? Because we're deficient in a nutrient. Or we might be trying to fill an emotional need, or it's out of habit. So back to that food journaling, it can help us really identify what the root cause is. Because if we're paying attention and we say, oh, I was really upset because, I got in a car accident and I came home and I had ice cream. Well, then you understand that that was a stress response. But if you're constantly looking for a particular food, like a craving for chocolate is associated with low magnesium. So if you find yourself kind of looking for that same food over and over again, it can really tell us what your body is looking for, because the body searches for the right nutrients to keep you healthy. And so it will tell you, hey, go get this. Hey, go look for this. So that's one of the reasons we can have cravings. If you crave salt, don't be afraid of salt. Salt is okay, but if you're in constant craving of salt, like you're having that, then we need to take a look at like your adrenal health and some of the other things going on in your life. Because if you're in a stress state, you could be utilizing your adrenal glands more than, and we don't have time to go into what your adrenal glands, the function of all that is, but they can throw that salt craving into high effect. And so don't be afraid of salt. We do need to have salt in our diets. And I talked about the sodium on those packaged foods, but use real salt. So we want to choose salt like Himalayan pink sea salt. I love Redmond real salt. So, you know, choose those whole salts. Salt should be dirty. If you're looking at your salt and it's pure white, that's processed. They've taken all of the minerals out of that salt. All it is the sodium that's left, and you're not going to get the balance. Minerals, sodium, and potassium and calcium and magnesium, they all live on something called a mineral wheel, and they have relationship with each other. And if you're just dumping in one mineral, you're going to be throwing some of those other ones off. So your salt, I say your salt should look dirty. So if you have a dirty looking salt, you're probably getting all the other minerals in your salt. Craving fats, eat real fats. So if you have, we just got done talking about fats. Fats are great for satiation. They're great. They help keep your diet balanced, and they help keep the cravings down. Because if you're constantly eating in this low fat state, your body is not going to feel satisfied, and you're going to feel like you never feel full. You never feel like you actually got a meal. So eat those real healthy fats that we talked about, not processed vegetable oils. Stay away from the canola oil and stay away from the industrial seed oils. We don't want to put those in the diet. They're not going to be helpful to creating that whole health picture. What about eating away from home? Oh, so frustrating. You know, you go out and you're like, what can I have? The first thing I want to say is do the best you can. So when you go out to a restaurant, look for a clean piece of protein. Look for those vegetables. That's really what you want to be scanning that menu for and looking. And I am a huge fan of like mixing and matching, especially if I'm at a sit-down restaurant. I'm like, I want this protein and I want those vegetables. And what's the worst thing that they can say to me is, sorry, we can't do that for you. But at least I asked. I did the best I could. And the bummer part is that restaurants use cheap oils. It is what it is. So when you eat out, know that you're going to get exposure to those oils that we just said to avoid. It just kind of like it goes with the nature of eating out. You can't necessarily avoid those. If you really get down and dirty on it, you can ask for them to like just grill the chicken breast, plain dry. I promise you it's not going to be tasting super delicious, but you know, it is what it is. So you got to do the best you can. If you're going to a party, plan ahead. And what I mean by that is if it's a potluck, bring something that you know you can eat. Or if you're going to go to a party and you don't know what's going to be served, then it's best to eat before you go, so that if you go to the party, you don't do like, damage. It's like damage control. Don't go to the party hungry. Eat before you go if you don't know what's being served and you're not sure if they'll have safe choices for you. So that it really comes down to looking at it and saying, we're going out this weekend and I don't know what that's going to look like, so I'm going to eat before I go. And remember, I do not know why we do this, but when we eat out, we lose our ever-loving mind like it's our last meal. And if we don't fill up when we leave the restaurant, that somehow we've failed as a restaurant goer or we're a party goer. It's like, it's not your last meal. You can go home and eat. There's going to be other food elsewhere. So don't get caught up in that feeling or that because we get emotional about it, right? We're like, oh no, there's nothing to eat. It's like, well, you could eat when you get home. Just like have something small, participate, but then know like you're going to eat again. So it's not your last meal when you go out. Be educated and informed. So our food industry preys on our pre-programmed brain for the low-fat, low-calorie foods. We have been sold a bill of goods there, and they are just, it plays to our emotions. We've been trained to be scared of high fat and calories, and the harder we've tried to get healthier, the sicker we've gotten because we've been listening to the marketers and not following our own individuality. It's really important for us to become educated and become informed. Low-fat diets and calorie counting doesn't work long-term. This is why it is so hard for people, and food becomes physically and emotionally addictive. If you are counting your calories and trying to follow that, it doesn't work long-term. You need to learn how to eat for what's best for you. eating low fat and low calories leaves your body at risk. You're going to throw yourself off, and you're going to push yourself into a craving cycle, and you're not going to have all the materials that you need for your body to be able to regenerate. So we want to make sure that we're eating fat to be satiated, and for other metabolic purposes, like I spoke about, hormones, that's important. And keeping our organs protected. But we want to make sure that we're doing that good job of balancing those macronutrients and getting everything in the right portions for your body. And what does that look like? We don't know unless we keep a food journal and start paying attention so that you can build the best diet for you. Stop eating when you're full versus cleaning your plate. Oh, so many of us have grown up where it was you had to clean your plate before you could leave the table. Honestly, what I like to do, this is a little hack, I'm going to give you a little hack, is to go in, and when you eat, I want you to put half of your food and save half of your food. And at the halfway point, I want you to evaluate, how full am I? And then at that point, if you want to continue to eat, continue to eat. But then you have a sense of, okay, I've eaten half, I'm assessing where I'm at, and then I can decide if I want more. And how much more do you want? This is a really powerful tool and can help you in terms of eating to feel satiated and full versus cleaning your plate. Higher palatable foods are addictive. So things that are higher in sugar and salt and high fat foods, they will feel like they're addictive. And so we have to pay attention to that so we're not getting hooked into a poor eating cycle. Junk food, all man-made foods, chemically altered to be more palatable. They're for profit. They're not trying to create health for you. So you need to pay attention and be an informed consumer. Now, if you choose to move into a way, you're going to choose clean eating and you're going to participate in that, you are probably going to have some detoxing effects from eating clean. And this should only last a few days, maybe a week. It could be longer depending on what you've been consuming. But this is just a list of a few things that could potentially happen. You might experience headaches. You might have lower energy. Some people tell me that they feel like they're coming down with a cold or a flu, and that's very indicative of a detox effect. Maybe your sleep gets disrupted for a little bit, or there's adjustments in your mood. Maybe you're short-tempered and you don't feel as good as you have. There could be acne or even digestive issues because eating clean takes a lot more from your body to break all that food down. So it can, you might feel a little bit more constipated or you might have looser stools, but that really should pass in a week's period of time. And then you should start to experience health out on the other side. A clean eating is a lifestyle. It is not a diet. So I want you to be remembering this, that you're not on a diet. So if someone says, what are you doing? Why are you choosing to be like this? Why is this important? I want you to have that idea. You're saying your response to someone is, I'm choosing a clean eating lifestyle. And that way you're not trying to promote any particular kind of diet. You're choosing the best diet for you. That's the goal. The goal is to find the foods that work best for you. I hope this video was helpful to you. And please, like I said, if there was anything that you missed, go back and hit the replay so that you can watch it again. Thanks for joining me and have a great day.